my ex-wife and I were diametrically opposite people,
Mm.
and she caused a lot of trauma to me, and she caused a lot of trauma to my kids, and so she broke me. Like I had a couple of mental breakdowns just because of everything that she put me through,
Mhm.
and that it took me a really long time to open up about that because I
Mm.
thought I was the failure, right? I thought I had messed things up.
Welcome to the Beautifully Becoming community. This is a sacred space for honest, faith-rooted conversations that encourage healing, inspire growth, and help you step into the person God is shaping you to be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very incredible episode of the Beautifully Broken Me podcast. I have here with me Shane Thrapp. He's a certified life coach. He specializes in adult ADHD, relationship, and non-monogamy. He helps his clients learn what tools they can use to work within the limitations that ADHD places on them. Shane is going to tell us more about himself. I am incredibly delighted to have Shane on my podcast show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much. So the audience will want to meet with you. Who is Shane?
I am as you said, I am a certified life coach. I help people with ADHD kind of navigate through the issues that they have as adults. Part of that is dealing with their relationships, both in romantic relationships, but also sexual relationships, familial relationships, how to kind of navigate around and kind of work through a lot of the issues that they've kind of developed. And part of that is the issue that some people with ADHD have problems in their romantic relationships due to, well, our very nature is kind of bouncing from person to person.
Mhm.
And so what I try to help people understand is there's instead of when you're dealing with non-monogamy or cheating, there's a way to work around it where you're doing it ethically and you're making sure you're communicating your needs to your partner, you're getting enthusiastic consent to learn how your relationship needs can be met in different ways, and just how to not cause a lot of trauma and pain to the people you're with. And it's just kind of a matter of learning what your particular brand of ADHD is, whether you're inattentive, hyperactive, a combined nature, and then kind of developing the tool set that you need to kind of work through all of the different things that you deal with in your life.
Okay, that's so incredible. Now I have an audience some of my audience will want to know more about ADHD. What does ADHD mean?
ADHD is really complicated. Is a kind of a complicated subject. ADHD can affect a lot of people, and it can kind of run across every different, I guess, spectrum of people.
Mhm.
So first off, let's start off with ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder.
Mhm.
And what happens is people have a hard time focusing. They have a hard time tracking time. Sometimes there's so much going on in their brain that they can't actually get anything done. They kind of freeze up. There's too much. There's too many things going on as far as their life is concerned. They're not able to pay attention to the people around them as much. They're not able to manage their time effectively, so they're late a lot or they're chronically early. It runs the gamut of all the different symptoms that people deal with as far as that's concerned. And what people don't know is that around 5 to 11% of adults have it, and it's not necessarily a disorder as much as it is a neurotype, similar to autism. And being on the autism spectrum, your brain is literally wired a certain way, and the chemicals that fire off and communicate within your brain are very different from your, and I'll use the term neurotypical, your average person. And so that causes a lot of things where when people are trying to, when people are able to stay at jobs for a long time, or they're able to function in a school system effectively, our system isn't designed for people who don't fit into that little status quo box.
Mhm.
And so people wind up going through their life not really realizing how they aren't able to function the same as other people.
Mhm.
And when that happens, there's a lot of pain and trauma that happens to them. They get told what, they get things said to them like, why aren't you living up to your potential? Why can't you be like this person? Why can't
Mhm.
why are you such a screw up? Why are you such a loser? And when you live your life dealing with all of those people in your lives telling you that you're defective and things like that, and you get to be an adult, and then you're finally diagnosed with ADHD,
Mhm.
you you're you don't know what to do, because again, our society doesn't train us in how to navigate what our strengths are. We don't understand how to work around the limitations that we have. And so
Mhm.
as an ADHD life coach, what I do is I help people figure out that process. We work with psychiatrists to get them the medications that they need. We make sure that they're getting the therapy that they need. And then as a life coach, my job is to kind of help them build the goals, build the tool set that they need, and then understand their strengths and limitations, and then advocate for themselves to the people around them. Developing different relationships so that they're able to create this environment that allows them to actually be successful and thrive within their life.
Wow, that is so incredible, the work you guys do. Like, this is so commendable. I just really, out of curiosity, could there be root causes of ADHD? Because for someone to have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in adulthood, right? I'm just thinking there could have been something that possibly would have triggered it, possibly in the past when they were much younger. Yeah, is there a possibility like that?
There's a lot of different causes for ADHD. The primary ones that we know of that actually exist
Mhm.
is that it's a neurotype. Your it's how your brain is wired, and the largest factor of that is genetic.
Hmm.
There's other cases where trauma, like
Mhm.
head trauma, can actually induce ADHD symptoms.
Okay.
Lead paint is actually can be involved in it. So there's a large number of different things that can bring about the ADHD symptoms, but
Mhm.
an actual cause is kind of hard to tell. We understand what it is, we understand what it does to the brain, we understand like how it affects people, but the actual cause runs everything from one theory that I actually like is that since there is such a genetic component to it, is that um, we have the genes that have been activated for people whose history includes the hunter-gatherer groups.
Mhm.
And so going all the way back to, think of your Native Americans, think of Aboriginal tribes, African
Mhm.
tribes, those that still function within a hunter-gatherer society. Those genetics align with a lot of the features that are prevalent in people with ADHD. The ability to hyper focus on a specific thing for a specific amount of time, the ability to work within a crisis in a way that is it's very different from what we consider neurotypical people. Whenever you have a person who has ADHD, it's
Mhm.
almost as if everything kind of slows down for them in a crisis, and they're able to function at a very high level. You see a lot of cases where you need to be able to have the ability to function within a very fast-paced environment. So think about a hunter who is having to track small game or do a lot of things throughout the day that are very completely different. So that's one hypothesis. The other is that it's essentially it is genetic, but at the same time, it's simply a mutation where your brain just forms differently. And then again, there are also environmental impacts where we see like lead paint and other things of that nature, where it's caused the developmental issues that we see that kind of identify with the structure of an ADHD brain.
Wow, this is incredible. Like, I'm enjoying this conversation so far. I just really want to know what led to the birth of ADHD. Like, how come you have this passion for adult ADHD? What brought about it? What was the story behind it?
So as I got older and started, and I got into a marriage, and then that didn't work out. It was a really abusive relationship. I started really, after that marriage kind of, self-destructed, I started really trying to focus on my mental health and to get better. And then a few years later, my oldest son, when he was 8 or 10, I can't remember how old he was, but he was diagnosed with ADHD by the school counselors. And so I wanted to be a good parent, and so I started looking into what ADHD was. And as I was trying to look into it, the more I kept reading about it, the more I kept learning about it, the more I kept going, oh, okay. It started hitting check boxes for me, you know what I mean? It's like, I have that problem. Oh, I have that problem. Oh, I have that problem. And I was like, and I started going, okay, I think I have ADHD.
Wow.
And so, but I didn't have a job where I had insurance. I didn't have the resources to be able to find a psychiatrist or anything like that. So I essentially just started studying ADHD. And a couple years later, I met my my current wife, and she's a special needs teacher, and she's been doing this for years. And as we kind of started getting to know each other, she was like, "Hey, have you ever been tested for ADHD?" And I was like, "No, but I've been really reading up on it a lot, and I think I have it." She goes, "I think you need to find a psychiatrist who can help you with that, because a lot of the issues that I'm seeing you deal with, I'm fairly certain they're ADHD." And again, my wife is a special needs teacher. She works with students with severe ADHD, autism, and other serious to moderate to serious disabilities, cerebral palsy, things of that nature. And so once I got to a point where I actually had the insurance and was able to get seen by a psychiatrist, I started really trying to find a psychiatrist who could diagnose me. And it was really frustrating because, a lot of psychiatrists at that time, and this was about 10 years ago, they didn't believe that adults could have ADHD.
Wow.
Right? Like, it wasn't very well known. And then, of course, as time has gone by, we've really started understanding that 5 to 11% of adults have ADHD, and that ADHD isn't just a childhood thing. It's it continues on through adulthood. We know that trauma makes ADHD worse. We know that people who are neurodivergent have a 35% more likelihood to be abused and have more trauma in their lives. And so, as I kept getting further into it and learning more about it, I finally really put my foot down to a couple of my psychiatrists that I've been going to see, and I was like, I need to know if I have ADHD. And if you're not willing to help me, I need to find somebody who will. And
Mhm.
so, I finally found a psychiatrist. They finally broke it down for me. They finally got me tested. And once they got me tested, I have severe ADHD of combined types,
Wow.
both inattentive and hyperactive, and it just kind of depends. Um, and so, long story short, I, you know, ever since then, I've been really focused on my own mental health, and I kind of started really working around it, and with really good therapy and decent medication, I've started getting a handle on it.
Hmm. Now, tell us a little bit about therapy and mental health, because a lot of people don't think this is what they know. They just feel like, I don't want to do therapy. It's not, it's just for people who have extreme traumatic situations, So, would you recommend therapy?
Oh, absolutely. Um, so here's the thing: a lot of people don't realize that how screwed up our childhoods are, right?
So true.
They live in their lives and they think that a lot of these behaviors are normal, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, think back to your childhood and how often were you spanked with a belt?
So true.
Or how often did your parents sit here and tell you, belittle you,
Mhm,
or treat you as if you were lesser, or my way or the highway,
mhm,
right? As children of the 80s and 90s, this is our normal, right? But here's the thing: we continue that normal, what we see as normal, into
mhm.
our children now, and now we're starting to understand how much trauma spanking causes, how
Absolutely.
much physical damage, not just in your, not just in the way of what we see, welts and bruises and stuff like that, but how
Mhm,
much neuro damage happens from things as simple as spanking.
mhm.
How damaging is it to be constantly told that, I'll use this one as an example, and you may resonate with this, and some of your listeners may. How many men whose fathers aren't into pictures or whose mothers aren't into pictures does the other parent take it out on them? How many children of divorcees hear the negative critiques of their parents passed down on them? Oh,
Mhm.
you're just like your father, or
Mhm.
you're just like your mother.
Absolutely.
You're a fuck up. I'm sorry. You're a screw up, just like your dad is.
Mhm,
Uh, you're a slut, just like your mom. How many,
mhm.
like, this does damage to us. This causes trauma to us, and so I would point out to anybody who doesn't feel like you need therapy.
Mhm.
Um, think of all the negative things that have happened to you in your life, and be honest with yourself, and how much of that are you passing down to your kids?
Absolutely.
We don't realize how bad the cycle of abuse is, the generational cycle of abuse that we
Mm,
continue on, until
mm.
we really start to dig in and be self-reflective of what we actually went through, and what we're passing down and what we're doing to our kids that's causing a lot of serious issues.
Hmm. Someone could be like, I'm just really like, really enjoying this conversation, and I'm just thinking in the head of one of an audience that could be listening, and they could just be like, maybe I have ADHD. How would they find out if they do?
There's a lot of resources online where you can take tests. There's a website called Attitude Magazine. They have
Okay.
a lot of self tests that you take. There's also another website called CHADD.org.
Mhm,
You can go there and get self tests, and you can take those tests, and they're not clinically valid, but what they can do is point you in the right direction
mhm.
and give you a little bit of feedback on what you may actually be dealing with. And then you can take that information to an actual psychiatrist and say, hey, I think I have ADHD. These are all the things that I deal with. I did take this online test, and this is the results that I got from it. I'd like to be tested. And don't ask for it. You need to tell them, I'd like to be tested.
Okay.
And if they say anything that's negative, or they say that adults don't have ADHD, or if they try to say that it's a part of depression or bipolar, that's not acceptable.
Mhm.
because the thing with ADHD is there's a lot of comorbidities that come with it, and those comorbidities are depression, they are anxiety and bipolar disorder and different types of PTSD.
Mhm.
And the root cause is because you have ADHD and you grow up in a childhood and adulthood where you're abused for it, which causes, like I said, the comorbidities that come with it. And
Mhm.
so a lot of psychiatrists try to treat the trauma without treating the ADHD,
Mm.
which keeps the ongoing problem, the underlying problem
Mhm.
going forward, because you're not able to function in this society that we live in, because the society that we live in expects people to meet a certain status quo, to be
Absolutely.
normal.
Mhm.
And if you're not normal, then you're shunned. And if
Mhm.
you're shunned, you don't have the same resources and abilities as other people, and you can't get a good job, and you can't keep a good job, and you're bouncing from relationship to relationship, causing more and more trauma to yourself.
Absolutely.
So you have to really advocate for yourself and
Mhm.
say, I need some help with my ADHD. And I believe I have it. And so once you get the actual diagnosis from a psychiatrist, you also need to get into therapy. There's things like cognitive behavioral therapy where they start to train you on how to form better habits, how to build a
Yeah.
structure around yourself. And if you have the resources, there's people like me, ADHD life coaches, who
Mhm.
then help you build accountability, find the tool set that you need to kind of
Mhm.
create the environment around yourself that allows you to thrive. You
Mhm.
need to be able to, like I said, advocate for yourself. So that means being able to go to your spouse and say, I have ADHD, and this is what that means. I
Wow.
need your help with these things. I need you not to keep causing trauma to me by expecting me to meet this normal that you think I'm supposed to be,
Mhm.
because I'm not normal. There is no normal.
Mhm.
Everybody is different. But these are the limitations that I have. And so you have to learn how to communicate that to people. Just like you learn to communicate to people um, if you're missing an eye, or if you're
Mhm.
blind, or if you're deaf, you understand that these are your limitations, and you need
Mhm.
the people around you to understand these are your limitations. And
Absolutely.
so nobody is going to sit here and deride a person who's deaf for not being able to hear what they're saying
Mhm.
without a hearing aid, or being able to lip read, or being able to read and understand sign language.
Mhm.
So you have to treat ADHD the same way. They can't expect you to always be on time. They can't
Mhm.
expect you to be able to hit a deadline all the time.
Mhm.
They can't expect, in a lot of cases, they can't expect you to be very consistent,
Mhm.
because the way our brains work is very different from the other people. And so you have to build this environment around yourself so that you're able to meet those needs that are of the people around yourself, but also your needs as well.
Absolutely. I just really want to thank you, Shane. Really telling us more about ADHD. I really, really like it. I have a couple more questions, and then we're just going to wrap up. Quickly, I know you did not experience domestic violence, but this is really asking out of curiosity. Like, why does men not come out boldly to say that, I experienced domestic violence, just like women, why is it that a lot of men kind of shy away from saying that I'm a survivor?
Honestly, it has to do with how we're raised. Our society really messes men up a lot, because everything that we see has men portraying this super strong
Mm.
stereotype that we're not meant to show our emotions.
Mhm.
I brushed on it a little bit earlier, but my ex-wife and I were diametrically opposite people, and I should have recognized a lot of the red flags of what I would have to deal with her
Mhm.
as we got into our relationships. But she was horrifyingly emotional abusive,
Mm.
and she caused a lot of trauma to me, and she caused a lot of trauma to my kids. And so she broke me. Like, I had a couple of mental breakdowns just because of everything that she put me through.
Mhm.
And that it took me a really long time to open up about that, because I
Mm.
thought I was the failure, right? I thought I had messed things up. And while I did mess some things up, I also had to recognize that I wasn't the only, person in that dance. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I sat here and once I recognized how much damage she was doing to me, I looked back at what my dad had done to me and how much damage my childhood had done to me.
Hmm.
I really started making sure that I didn't follow through with that same misguided stereotype. I
Hmm.
wanted people to know my damage. I wanted people to know the the amount of pain that I went through. And but as men, it's really hard, right? We don't have the same, or we do, but we don't take advantage of the resources that we have with group therapy or or having a environment where we can share our vulnerabilities
Hmm.
and our fears and our and the things that we're ashamed of, and get
Hmm.
the same kind of support that you see within the same vein with women,
Hmm.
right? And like, because a lot of what we hear from other men is like, "Oh, you need to man up," or
Hmm.
that's you sound like a woman, like, you know. So like when we do share our pain, when we do share the struggles that we deal with, like the people around us really focus on that stereotype, and that's why we have such a hard time with getting into therapy and opening up about the issues that we go through, because we're taught so long that we need to hold that stuff back. We need to be strong. We need to be we need to be the leader. We need to be the head of the household. We need to be alpha males. I hate that term, by the way.
Crazy.
So we're just not shown that, and our society doesn't promote that. And we're starting to see, especially in our younger youth, we're starting to see a big change in that happening. But um, a lot of older men really deal with a culture that has taught us that it's wrong to feel, and it's
Mm.
wrong to be emotional, and that
Mhm.
it's weak to show weakness.
Mhm.
And it's really hard.
Wow. Yeah, this is you just hit the core. Like you hit the hammer on the nail. Like it was really like what it is. Because while I was at the domestic violence shelter, there wasn't any man there. It was just 12 women, and the shelter was supposed to be for men and women basically, but it was like what's going on. And men don't always open up, and this brings me back to my next question. What would you advise any man who is currently going through domestic violence, who is in this very toxic relationship with, their wife, where their wife is possibly emotionally abusing them? What would be your best advice for this man listening?
If you are, especially if you're a man and you feel like you're being emotionally abused, you are.
Hmm.
Like that's the thing. If you're self-aware enough to know that every morning when you wake up that you dread anything that your wife is going to say to you because it hurts and it's causing you pain, or if you have been isolated from your friends because of um, jealousy issues or unfair gaslighting, where they're essentially telling you what you're feeling is not real.
Mhm.
If they're minimizing your own mental health or
Mhm.
your own physical health,
Mhm.
if they're treating you as if you're the problem, even
Mm.
though you're doing your best to be a good person, you're doing your best to be a good father, you're doing your best to be a good husband. If you're dealing with that kind of abuse, then you need to talk to a therapist first,
Mhm.
because there's different issues that people deal with that cause these kind of pains that may not be due to abuse. I use this. I'll bring up ADHD again. There's a thing called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and
Mhm.
it's our brains essentially telling us all of the abuse that we've gone through.
Mhm.
And every single time that there's a criticism or a rejection from somebody, we feel that very strongly, that we're being unfairly treated. And so
Mhm.
that's why I say talk to a therapist first. And then when you're talking to the therapist, be very honest with what you're going through and get their feedback from them. And then if you're really having a lot of issues in your relationship, look and see if you can get relationship therapy or couples therapy where your spouse is brought in with you and you'll have a discussion about things and you work through things. And if your spouse won't do that with you, then you're probably being abused. Because if there's a serious issue with the relationship and both people are wanting to get help with it and both people actively work to get help with it, then you've got a lot of hope there. But if one person is doing all the work and then one person is trying to get therapy and the other person is very antagonistic towards it, especially if they're being derisive towards it, then you're not in a good place. And I teach people this, and it's not very popular, but relationships don't have to last forever.
Whoa, that is just one. Oh my goodness. Okay. Relationships don't have to last forever. Okay.
Because
that was like a bomb right now. Okay.
Because we're taught all our life that you're supposed to struggle in a relationship and you're supposed to stick it out through the hard times, and that a successful relationship is the one where one of you dies and the other one lives, and you're old, and that's a successful relationship. However, how happy were you throughout that relationship? Were you that old couple who sniped and barbed at each other all the way up until one of you died and the other one was happy that you died? Like, a relationship, it doesn't matter if it's one night, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 4 years, 5 years. It doesn't matter how long the relationship lasts. The successful relationship is the one where everybody is happy throughout the relationship. Now, and I don't mean the little points where y'all are kind of having little spats or y'all are y'all are dealing with like little stresses and things of that nature. That's the stuff you work through, right? Where both of you are true partners and you're struggling, but both of you hold each other up, or one of you holds the other up who's down, and vice versa. That's the struggle that you should work through each other. But if one of you is being really shitty towards or really crappy towards the other, or if one of you is cheating and being really foul about things, or if we go back, if one's being abusive, like, you don't have to put up with that. Like because when you look at relationships, and I'll use an example, and you kind of brought it up. When you marry really young, so say 20 to 22 or 18 to 22, there's an 80% likelihood you're going to get divorced within 8 years.
Whoa, that's another bomber. Okay.
And the reason that happens is because from 18 to 30, you go through a dramatic change. Mentally, physically, and emotionally. You go through a massive change in who you are fundamentally. And that doesn't even count if you've gone to college, right? Think about yourself as 18 and then think about yourself at 30. How much different are you?
Absolutely.
And so the person you married at 18, or the person you married at 20, the person you married at 22, they married that person that they fell in love with at that time. But then both of you start to get older and both of you start to change. And those changes may be fundamental enough that you're irreconcilably different now and not able to be around each other. You may be very, very different from each other and not able to find the spark that you had when you were younger. And that's okay, because now you're different, and that doesn't mean you're worse. That doesn't mean you're bad. You've just grown apart, and that's a part of how relationships happen. And so some relationships can, with a foundation of communication and trust and honesty, can make that transition and develop and evolve into a different type of relationship where both are very happy and able to be with each other and have learned to deal with each other's idiosyncrasies. but many don't. Many aren't capable of that change, especially if there's already a lot of trauma and abuse and neglect and
Mhm.
different issues that people have within their relationships. If you don't have a foundation of communication and you don't feel safe with the person and you don't
Mhm.
feel like you can be honest with the person and trust them to be honest with you, then you're not going to be able to make those transitions that happen within your life.
Wow.
And so at that point, you have to own the fact that your relationship now needs to end.
Wow.
Because if you keep going past that point, nothing good is going to come from it. You're going to get worse and worse. You're going to get more and more bitter. And if you have children in the mix, you are going to start sniping at each other because you have
Mm,
all these stressors coming down on both of you. And
absolutely.
now you're adding trauma on top of your kids.
Hmm.
And you're causing a lot of undue pain to the people around you. You're driving your friends away. You're driving your family away.
Mhm.
You're isolating each other. And now it's just two angry, pissed off people who are
Mm,
just mad at each other all the time. And then there's kids involved, and it's just too much.
wow.
But if you can recognize that the differences have gotten to be too much and
Mhm.
that y'all are fundamentally different people now,
Mhm.
and you start working the separation out at that point, then both people can start healing and accepting themselves for who they are.
Hmm.
And sometimes you see the relationship being able to come back around.
Wow.
Or you can see those people being healthy co-parents
Mhm.
where they've developed themselves, they understand themselves better now, they've recognized the differences, they
Mhm.
appreciate that the person isn't bitter and crappy towards the other,
Mhm.
and now you can be successful co-parents.
Wow. Oh, this has been an incredible conversation. Do you want to say something else before we almost wrap up?
Yeah, and this kind of goes to something I've said before to other clients, and I've said it in other shows as well.
Mhm.
I learned whenever I was going through therapy, I had this, I kept going after um, to my therapist and going, I just want to be normal,
Mm.
right? I just want to live a normal life. I want to have that, work that job for 20 years,
Mhm.
married to the same woman for 30 years, 2.5 kids, white picket fence. I had this mindset of I want to be normal, right?
Mhm.
And the thing that took me the longest to start getting over was like learning that there is no normal, right?
Mm.
When you have ADHD, you're not broken, right? You're not deficient. You're not a problem. You're not a disease.
Mhm.
You're just different. That's all there is to it. You think differently, and that's
Mhm.
okay because everybody is different. Everybody is weird. There really is no normal.
Hmm.
It's just a social construct so that we can kind of like measure what our society is actually like, and it doesn't take into considerations the very um, diverse and widespread spectrum of the human mind.
Mhm.
We talk about the diversity of skin color, we talk about the diversity of genders and sexuality and things like that, but we need to really start talking about how neurodiversity really affects us as a society because we don't take into account how people think differently, especially when you start adding cultural differences between different races and different um, 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 backgrounds as far as where you're from, where you
Mhm.
grew up, your environmental differences. And so we really need to start celebrating the diversity that's in our brains and how
Mhm.
how we think and how we were raised and respect that. And
Absolutely.
I wish I'd learned that there wasn't any normal because I spent 30 years of my life trying to be normal.
Oh, wow, wow. This has been such an incredible conversation. And I just want this kind of what your last conversation or your last word takes me to my question. You said you wish you learned, you know. And then I just want to ask you this question. I always ask all my podcast guests this particular question. What do you what would you advise your younger self?
Buy Amazon stock. No. No. Being honest with myself, if I could go back and tell myself anything, it was just, build an environment around yourself that takes into account the things that you need from the people who are around you. Build an environment around yourself that takes into account how you think, how you feel, and build an environment around yourself that includes being honest and communicating exactly who you are and what you are. Because we grow up with these masks that we have to put on to fit into what society wants us to be, and those masks do not help us. They cause a lot of harm. They may help us in the short term, prevent us from being, abused worse than we already are and things of that nature. But in the long term, what they do is they cause us to be dishonest, and that causes people to not really trust us. And there's an inherent falsity to it, because we build, like, these masks are kind of built around these Frankensteinian concepts of what the popular people are, the humorous people are. And so, what I wish I knew then, I wish I knew then to just be who I was, just to be as authentically who I was, even if people around me didn't like that person, even if they didn't think that I was as funny as I thought I was. Those people will be out of your life. Absolutely. But the people who will come into your life will appreciate you for who you are.
Absolutely. That's such a good one. The people who's going to be in your life will appreciate you for who you are. That's what I take. Whoa, this has been super, super, super incredible. This has been, oh my God, like so awesome. Such an incredible conversation. I just want to thank you so much, Shane. Thank you for coming on.
I really appreciate you letting me come on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending this time with me and the beautifully becoming community. I pray today's conversation reminded you that your journey has meaning. Your process is sacred, and God is still at work in you.